So welcome everyone. It's our penultimate meeting for Organizer Hangouts. It's 2 more weeks until IDDS Education kicks off and then all the summits. So it's really exciting. Today we're going to talk a bit about participant teams and a little bit about facilitation tips and what it means to be a design facilitator. I'll just be doing an overview and I'll give you more resources that you can go to for more depth. And then we'll also, at each organizer orientation, we'll be going over more facilitation skills and going through some more sticky questions and actually have some time to practice together in person, because there's only so much we can do via Zoom, even though we have breakout rooms. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to turn on, but while I'm doing that, I know that we have some seasoned veteran organizers on the line, then we have some current organizers on the line. For those of you who are organizing right now, do you just want to give us an update where your like projects and participant teams are at? I think most of you are about to send out project selection forms and haven't quite set up teams yet. Is that accurate?
Project selection. So IDDS Amazon, we haven't sent out the project selection form to the participants yet. We had a meeting on Monday where we were agreeing on the design facilitator lead, and yeah, that's basically the next steps we're going forward. Wow. Sending out the project selection and the session selection form to the participants.
And Janet, it's kind of similar with cook stoves, right? You guys are at the point of just still narrowing down the projects, and probably in a couple weeks you'll be sending out project selection forms to teams.
Yep, I think that's the plan.
Cool.
For us, yeah, our summit's at the end of October, so we'd like to launch the application for participants.
Cool. So if you guys know of any Zambians, let them know it's happening. Cool. Well, so hopefully I've tried to cater this to kind of where you guys are at right now. And then Daniel's on the line. I know he has some tips that he shared before, so that's great. Also, Max has some tips as well, and Deborah, and those of you who have just facilitated before. So there's a lot of people I know that are going to be watching this afterwards. Feel free to chime in, add anything that you want to add. But as you can see, we try to go for this healthy, happy team at IDDS, where it's this beautiful participant mix. And that's kind of one of the beautiful things about IDDS, right, is that we bring together a diverse group of people, teach them the design process, the co-creative design process, and hopefully something cool is coming out of that, right? But I want to start out with this picture. And why would I start out with this picture? What do you guys see when you look at this picture? What do you think?
Well, he's enlightened.
Enlightened in more ways than one. Yeah. What else?
Also separate from the rest of the group.
Separate from the rest of the group, yeah.
He's the only one that is not looking in the same direction.
Yeah. What else? Hey, who just joined the line? It's Edie, welcome.
Thanks. I can't stay for long, but I just, because I have a bunch of stuff that I'm working on, but I thought I would pop in case it was useful.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. So right now, we just started, we're looking at this picture, and what is it that you think of when you see this picture?
Okay, has everyone already shared?
Yeah, some people have shared. Someone said, Michael said he looks enlightened. Deborah said he's the only one looking up. Dana said that he is
and then separated from the rest of the group.
Separated from the rest of the group.
Yeah, I feel like he's listening to someone that no one else is hearing.
Yeah. So why do you guys think I'm trying to start with, when we're talking about teams and facilitation, why would I start with this random picture? What do you think?
Sometimes not everyone's on the same page.
So true, Daniel, yes. Sometimes people are on different pages. Anything else?
If different people notice something or pay attention to different things.
Yes, different people notice things, pay attention to different things. Who else joined the line? Yeah. Welcome. Anything else? Any other reasons why I might start with this picture?
I don't know, but it's, I don't think it's related, but I have the feeling that some ET will just undo.
Something great will come down.
Or he's going up.
Yeah,
I don't know.
no, that's good. Something could be coming down, something could be going up. So yeah, there's all of those are great reasons, and certainly part of the reason that I'm showing you this. The main reason I want to show you this is to remind you of something that all of you intrinsically already know. But when we think of teams, it's good to remember that teams are comprised of individuals. And we talk about participants as this big group, but at the end of the day, it's a group of very unique individuals that we poured through a lot of time. I think all of you have read through your fair share of participant applications, poured through a lot of time to intentionally select and make sure that they're here. And remembering that these are phenomenal people, including yourselves, but that also there's a lot going on inside each individual person. They're thinking about, even right now, I'm sure each of you are thinking about, what you just did, what you're about to do, what you need to do today. Maybe things going on at home, maybe things with your family, with your friends, maybe with different relationships, maybe different things you need to accomplish. So we each already have these things going on inside of our heads. And we know this, but sometimes we forget about that when we talk about team dynamics or we talk about facilitating a team. That at the end of the day, it's not just about the team, but it is also about the individual and bringing those individuals together and creating kind of a safe space where each unique person can feel at home and comfortable with each other, even if there is tension. So just keeping this in mind that each of us are individuals, we have different things going on. So also if something's not working out, it might not necessarily be a team thing. It might just be something's going on with that person personally, and that's okay. So keeping that in mind, remembering that individuals comprise a team and there is a synergy that happens. So it's not just the individuals. And I think we all know this and we've experienced it. It's not just us when we come together as a team, but something more ends up happening. And that's kind of the magic of IDDS. So when we talk about forming participant teams, which most of you are very quickly approaching, it's the fun, it's the magic. We try to make sure that there is an intentional mix of folks. In an ideal world, we'd love to see all types of diversity. So all of these listed, right? We want to see gender diversity, a cultural diversity, a socioeconomic diversity, expertise, that we have some makers, some social scientists, some designers, some engineers, some age diversity, if possible, value diversity even, though we really don't measure that. It's just a nice thing to have. But also something new that we're kind of adding that's been percolating is kind of an introversion and extroversion diversity. You naturally kind of see it as a facilitator, try to cater towards that. And also direct and indirect communication. This usually comes out within your cultural diversity, sometimes more so than others. Some cultures are a bit more direct. So as you guys know, Americans typically are more direct than, let's say, more Asian cultures, which are a little bit more indirect. And it'll vary per team. But we try to achieve just a diverse mix of all of them. At the end of the day, we're all volunteers. So trying to put these teams together. So we have developed a handy dandy tool. The project selection form right here, if you click on it, it has a nice template that you can go to. There are a few things that I still need to edit on it to make sure it matches the one that Daniel was on there from before. But basically when we ask, I've edited this form so that when we ask about project selection, participants are not only signing up for their projects, but they also tell us a bit about themselves. So they tell us what their background is, what their gender. do they lean a little bit more towards introversion or extroversion? This is a very light form. It's not an in-depth Myers-Briggs. It's just a simple tool that you can use to help make sure that you get the mix you're trying to achieve. If you want to add more, that's great. That's up to you. But it's very light so that it's very simple to manipulate on the back end and kind of put your teams together, because it will take some time to put them together. And once you kind of get these forms back, you want to try to make sure that you achieve balance with the gender, the expertise. We try to get a mix of all different types of expertise, definitely making sure that there's a designer and or engineer on each team if possible to kind of help with the technical side. And also making sure that there is a community member per team, if not two per team, to make sure that it really is co-creation and we're designing with and not just for. And if you can get a balance of introvert, extrovert, direct, indirect, that's great. It's pretty easy to separate via nationality. I left nationality blank, so if there are people who have lived all over and they're like, I don't know what to consider myself, they might put that in, and that's okay. And then just spreading those people out. So in an ideal world, we're achieving all these mixes. If you're running low on time, it's good to just at least make sure, you know, your gender, your expertise mix, and your cultural mix is there. Does anybody here want to kind of share their experience of what it's been like for them when they're doing participant mixing and setting up the teams?
I just took a bite of muffin, but I had a thought to share.
Yeah.
So one of the things that when you mentioned this idea of having a community member on the team, so it's really co-creation, one of the things that is important to realize that one single person on a team doesn't necessarily make it co-creation. And so one of the challenges is to think about how can you effectively engage more community members, and the sort of the disconnect between those community members who are actually participants and those community members who are, you know, just in the local area. And I think that it's not an overcomable challenge by any means, but I just think it's important that that we recognize that, you know, co-creation happens with a larger number of stakeholders, and so I would just put that out there in terms of, I mean, it's different when you're talking about selecting teams. You're obviously not then going out to people who are not participants, but just to keep in mind that there's a great opportunity for having more members on the team than just those who are participants. And then it's nice to think about how can you make them feel as included as possible in a way that doesn't break down the barriers of, you know, who's a participant and who's are not in a dangerous or bad way. So I just wanted to put that out there as another thing to sort of consider as forming teams. You know, are there local leaders in the community who are not participants who should somehow be engaged on the team, and what does that look like? And I think that that's something that has changed from different summits to different summits. In some cases, they really, you know, they participate very actively, and in other cases, they're just consultants.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point, Amy. And also that, making sure that people feel welcomed and included, while also making sure the team knows who they are and what their goals are. I want to come back to, Amy, I think you were starting to allude a little bit to it, but is that also when selecting community members, we talked about this a bit last week, I believe. In an ideal world for each project, your community members will be end users of the project you're working on, so that, you know, you're getting user feedback. But we all know that in reality, our projects are a vehicle for learning, and so they pivot and they change. And so what you might perceive as the end user from the beginning might change by the end, and that's okay. So that's why we just kind of generally say a community member. But you do want to be talking, like as the project develops, you do want to be talking to who might be the end user, whether that's at a systems level, administrative level, or personal level. And making sure that those people do feel welcome, like Amy was saying, so that's good. I think someone's microphone, if people could mute their microphone, that would be great. Thank you. I think someone's is open. Anything else before we start talking about design facilitators and more about facilitation tips? Maybe Daniel or Max, do either one of you want to talk about maybe the experiences you guys have had in terms of, or any tips that you might have when it comes to mixing participant teams?
I don't remember if it was on the previous slide, but one thing that can be really important depending on your participant makeup is languages. There are, at many summits, some participants who may not feel as comfortable expressing themselves in English or Portuguese or whatever the languages may be. And so sometimes in forming teams, you want to look at it and make sure, is this person going to feel left out with the other members who are on this team? Is there a way that we can address that? And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's, 2 Brazilians at the summit, and so since one of them doesn't speak very good English, the other one has to be on the same team as them. But looking at if there's a floating organizer who might be able to help with language issues, if there's someone in the community, but it does end up being something that can have a very big impact on someone's experience, both the person who may struggle to express themselves in a language, as well as someone who can act as a translator but may not have the same interests as the person who needs translation.
That's great, Daniel. Thanks. Yeah, I'll add that to the list and then also to the form, because that can take a lot of time and energy, and it's another way of making sure that people's voices feel included, and also that they can stay up to date on the ideas as they're coming. Because I think a lot of us have had experiences of maybe translating for being with people, and especially when it gets to those exciting moments where you want to translate at the same rate that everybody else is going. It's good to be mindful of that. That's great, Daniel.
Bye.
Bye.
See you on Monday.
See you.
Okay, great. So yeah, I would, if it's okay, I'd suggest if you need, as you get to kind of this participant mixing, it just becomes a fun little matrix puzzle of putting them together, undoing it, putting it back together. This is why we recommend like sending those forms a month and a half out, so that when you get them, you have time to like calmly go through the matrix and try to mix them as best as you can. And then people, once they get to the summit, they'll inevitably be like 2 or 3 people that want to switch. And that's okay, but at least this way you've considered all those dynamics and trying to put them together. And in enough time where you don't have to worry about all the other things at the summit that you have to be doing, like putting your presentation together for the next day or making sure the community logistics are ready. But this way you can calmly do it before the summit. You have some time to work through it. And then if you need somebody else from the organizing team to help you, you can also pull them in as well. So feel free to ping us if you need any more help with that. I know Amy's done it obviously for years, so she's happy to give tips on what works, what doesn't. And then Daniel, Max, Deborah, but there's tons of people we can reach out to. So now I just want to touch on the role of design facilitator. I'm not going to go too heavy in it because Daniel actually has a great 1-hour presentation, which I quote in this in the following slide, which you can watch for more in depth. But I just want to give you a brief overview. So for those of you, I know that there are some people who aren't on the line right now, but who are watching, who are going to be design facilitators and maybe have never been a design facilitator before, or maybe not a design facilitator for IDDS. And so I just want to give you kind of a calm framework just to let you know there's a lot that a design facilitator doesn't encompass, but the 2 main things that you're kind of helping a team through is, 1, you're helping to guide them technically through the design process. So you're kind of the point person that'll be there with the team to remind them, you know, what the instructions are, where to go, help them think through different technical ideas, create those open questions to help them think through different things. But then there is also a relational aspect to it. And so you're helping the team. I think maybe some of you have seen this before, but the forming, storming, norming, and performing. But you're helping the team to form as a team. they're inevitably going to go through some conflict and disagreement, and that's good. It'll help tease out some good ideas. And then you're helping to kind of normalize and help them perform even better. But basically helping that relational side so that it can help the technical side. So it's both technical and relational. And you might find that you might be better more at the technical side than the relational, or you might find that you are really good with the relational and kind of struggle with the technical. And that's why we try to get design facilitators to pair with each other, someone who's a little bit more technical expertise with someone who's a little bit more relational. And that way you guys can learn from each other. But also to remember that all the design facilitators are kind of there for you guys to pull from each other. Because even, for example, as you guys know, with the technical side, you might be really good with water systems, for example, but your weakness is bicycles. So knowing who on your team has what type of technical expertise is a really good exercise. So we'll walk through that while we're at design during our organizer orientation, just so that if you guys haven't talked about it before, you can get to know what kind of expertise do we have in the room. See you later, Dana. And then also relationally, there are some people on your team who might be really good with with more of the relational and team dynamic side. So I'll openly admit I'm not a very good technical design facilitator. I could design you through the process, but when it comes to prototyping, I know very little. But when it comes to the relational side, I could definitely provide some mentorship and coaching. So if you need that, I offer that. And I want all of you to be able to provide that same type of expertise to each other. So we'll be doing that on the ground. But know too that if you want to reach out, you can obviously reach out through the Facebook group. So there's a lot more details into what the design facilitator role is. And I would encourage you that if you are a design facilitator, please schedule an hour to watch this design facilitation video that Daniel has facilitated with IDDS Lahore. It goes through all the specifics of what a design facilitator really is and does practically, because you will be the person in charge of the budget for your team and making sure that they have their tools, making sure that they know what instructions are, but you're not necessarily always with the team because you have other things that you'll be doing as well, and you really want that team to grow and thrive on their own together. So your role, when we talk about the design facilitator role, it's much more of a servant leader role than probably your typical project manager, team lead role, which are great and have their function. But ours, we try to aim for a little bit more of an agile team function where the design facilitator is there for the team, is supporting the team, basically making sure that they know what the goals of the process are, and helping to create that environment where all different styles, all different types of people are feeling welcome. So that means kind of having the foresight and thinking through, what's coming next. What are our goals and tasks? Yes. And then relationally, how are people doing in the room? Just kind of keeping a check on that. So Daniel has also some tips that are mentioned here in the video as well. So that's why I also would request that you watch this if you haven't yet before. But what I'd like to do is I've developed my own personal top 10 IDDS facilitation tips that I'd like to share with you. And then I want to open it up for all of you to share with each other any other facilitation tips kind of in addition to this. Or even any other stories that you want to share in addition to this. So when it comes to IDDS facilitation, number one is make sure that you just remember the bigger picture and what your task is at hand. Sometimes people come into groups and the group forgets what's our goal, how much time do we have. So just remind them, remember what it is, and remember the bigger picture outside of IDDS, and always be reminding them of that. Like what we're doing is both a learning process for them and also for communities. Number two, guide the team to achieve the goal. It's very similar to number one, but if you see someone's going off a little, that's okay. We want there to be exploration, but it's kind of hopefully you that's checking in to make sure that they're roughly going through the cycle at the same rate as everybody else. There will be some people that need to stall and slow down or experience conflict, and there will be some teams that go super quick. It's okay, as long as we generally start to head in the right direction about the same timing, then we're on a roll. This is probably the biggest one, is making sure just to create a positive, welcoming environment by asking open-ended questions. So this will go through some practice of this on the ground. But I think, as you guys know, it's a group, like I said, it's a group of individuals coming together who most of them haven't ever met each other before. So in addition to accomplishing this project, they're also trying to save face and also trying to make themselves known in the group and identify what role they are, and or not identify. Maybe they don't want to stand out too much, and both are okay. So just being mindful of that and making sure that introverts feel welcomed, that extroverts feel welcomed. Sometimes it can be a little bit more extroverted bent because our ideas are a little bit more verbal. So we have some activities that we provide that help kind of tease out and make it a more comfortable space for introverts. So whether that's writing stuff down first, or maybe putting Post-it notes on the wall and going over that together, we have a few tools. And again, asking open-ended questions to create, making sure that no one really feels defensive, but that everybody feels welcomed in the environment. And then number 4 is seeking to understand, listen and paraphrase what people said to make sure you understand correctly. Sometimes we hear, but we might have some assumptions going on. And so make sure that you as a facilitator kind of understand what it is, paraphrase if you need to, just to make sure you understood what they're saying. But also it's good to check and get a pulse if you sense that maybe somebody else is coming to the table with some assumptions. There might be conflict in which people are disagreeing on a particular idea or way to go, simply because they're both operating on different assumptions. Or one person had thought, oh, well, I thought, the chief was the head of the water system, and they're not. Okay, that makes sense. So helping to tease out what those assumptions might be, or just making sure that everybody's is being heard. Affirming people and having fun. It sounds cheesy, but there's actually a lot of studies out right now that are showing that when there is a more fun environment, that people feel more free and creative. And that's kind of intuitive, right? That when we're having fun and we feel affirmed in who we are, we feel free, we can get creative. Versus if we're feeling fearful or defensive, it really can take effect on our creativity. So as much as possible, creating that fun environment, feel free to turn on some music if you want. Like if people are doing independent things, you can turn on a little light music, have some fun. If you realize things are getting really tense in a room and you've tried several other tactics, feel free to take people out on a walk and just take a breather, really enjoy the moment, enjoy where you are, and maybe come back with a fresh start. Expect to be uncomfortable yourself as a design facilitator. It will happen. We all fail, and failure is okay. It's a learning process. It's all on how we get back up. So expect to be uncomfortable yourself as a design facilitator, and really prepare your team and remind them, expect to be uncomfortable. We're intentionally putting a group of diverse people together, which is beautiful and amazing. But it also means that there will be differences, there will be conflict, and people will be uncomfortable. And so what we're hoping to learn to do is to lean into that uncomfortability and really just learn from it, welcome it, acknowledge that there are differences, and really engage those to your benefit. There are certain strengths that come with particular expertises or particular backgrounds. So acknowledging that those are there and really engaging those when you can. And on a similar line, expect conflict. I know I've been hearing from a couple of you already, a couple of design facilitators who are getting a little bit scared. What if there's conflict? What will I do? My one thing I can assure you is there will be conflict, and it's okay. I think many of us have probably grown up in contexts where conflict is seen as a bad thing. And it could be, if it's left to its own devices, conflict could be a bad thing, especially when people start arguing with each other instead of arguing about the idea and really trying to focus on the idea and tease out the problems. Conflict can actually be a good thing. It can be a way of trying to understand, what does this person think? What are some of the assumptions that they have? What are some of their ideas? And what does this other person think? And what are some of their ideas? And what are some of those commonalities that are underneath? And what are some of the differences? And how can we pull and plug those differences? So it will happen, and it's okay. So just prepare your team that it will happen, and that we will learn to embrace it and take it step by step. And then also at the same time, expect unity, that it will happen, and welcome it. I think sometimes we can lean to either one extreme or another, and especially when I think we've all probably been in these times, where it just seems so stressful. We wonder, how will we ever get out of this together as a team? Not everybody's going to leave as best friends, but typically by the end, people feel really glad that they've made it through this process together. And sometimes people do disagree, and that's okay. And it is a process of learning, what does it mean to disagree with someone, but also move together as a team? And how can we use those disagreements to pull out some of our best ideas and come to some sort of consensus? And admitting that, sometimes we will, sometimes it won't be my idea that moves forward, it's someone else's. Sometimes it's all of ours together. Make disagreements about the problem, not the person. I think you guys have heard this before. But just really, especially when you start notice as a design facilitator, when you're in the room and you start facilitating these conversations, if you see that it might start heading down a line where people are beginning to attack each other, try to just scale back with an open-ended question, and make it again about kind of the problem at hand. So for example, if people are talking about, well, I think that we should do this solution versus this solution, maybe just scale back and say, if you start seeing that they're about to attack each other, just try to tease out a little bit more, have them explain more about their project idea, more about the problem or the issue. Sometimes it's a value difference. Different people value different things, and again, that's okay. And then maybe just coming together as a team to agree. Sometimes, like, I will secede to my values and yours, or yours and mine, but trying to see if there's a way we could build unity on the idea and compromise. And then lastly, save enough time for rapport building. I think in a lot of cultures, you hear that there's the difference between more of a task-oriented culture or a relational-oriented culture. A lot of these cultures where we are hosting the summit, for example, Brazil, Botswana, Uganda, are all very, and even Colombia, all of these are typically cultures that value relationships over task. And not all of our participants are coming from that culture. And so it's good to save time to build in that time where people can build relationship with each other, and then that will help feed into the task that you have to get accomplished. So making sure that they feel comfortable with each other. It's good as a design facilitator to get to know each of your people individually, and just make sure that you take time with them individually, get to know them, because you might see that there might be a conflict at the team table that's actually just an inner conflict that's coming out in front of everyone, or there's something else going on. They might be missing home, they might be exhausted or sick, they might have just something else going on. And so just kind of checking in on them. And again, if you're more of a technical person, you're not a relational person, feel free to reach out to your more technical people. This is also a helpful, and likewise, if you need more technical expertise, reach out to your technical people as well. If you realize you're heading into an area where you're not sure what might be the best pathway or what might be a good material to use, feel free to reach out to other design facilitators and pull them in and be like, oh, this person knows a lot of the pros and cons of each of the different materials. Here are some ideas that we could do. So this is just kind of to give it to you lightly. Again, for more details, I really encourage you to watch Daniel's session as well. So again, a couple tools that we use when forming the teams. We do have a project selection worksheet. I'll link all of these when I send this out. We have the working style worksheet, which many of you have done before. We will do it at organizer orientation, and then we will also do it again in person with participants. We'll also review nonviolent communication there in person as well. It'll be a little bit more interactive, scenario-based to walk through some of those, and we'll use real live design challenges that we've heard from the field. And then we'll go through a couple different tools that we have that make activities open to all. So for example, instead of brainstorming where everyone's talking out loud, we have something called brain writing, where people can kind of write things down. So I want to pause there. That was a lot of information sharing. So I want to give people an opportunity to respond and maybe share some of their experiences. And I think it looks like we have some chats going on here too. Great. So, cool. Great. So Agnes, are you on? Do I see Agnes on the line? Or Angela?
Hi, it's Angela.
Hi, Angela. Thanks for joining.
You're welcome. Agnes couldn't join. She had a meeting somewhere.
Yeah. How are you feeling about design? Are you going to be participating as a design facilitator with IDDS Cook Stoves?
No, I'm not a design facilitator.
Mm-hmm. But you'll certainly be guiding the team.
Yeah.
What about, we have a couple other people on the line. It looks like most people that are on the line right now have been design facilitators before. Do any of you, I had one more slide on kind of getting unstuck, but before we get to that, do any of you have any of your tips that you'd like to share in terms of key facilitation tips or common things that you see pop up all the time that you wish you knew when you were a design facilitator?
I think, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking about, there was a canvas that there was a lecture about canvas at IDS Lahore, where was, I didn't read before about it, and for me it was really hard to facilitate. So, like, things that will be given should be shared with the design facilitators before. So I hope that we will have everything very well, that we will give this all the lectures to the facilitators before the summit starts. So it was a little bit confusing. I think, yeah, I don't know if it's not a tip, but it's maybe just something that happened, and I think we should be aware. We should be aware about what are we giving to the participants, and the design facilitator should know a little bit at least just to explain about it.
Yeah, I think that's great. Being aware of what is being taught and what their role is in it, and what does that mean, as far in advance as possible. Yeah, that's good, Deborah.
Yeah. Just in terms of what Cher said, expecting conflict, it's great, and it really does help. And when it becomes personal, I really like point 5 about affirming people. Like, whenever it seems like the conflict is coming from a place of disrespect, I always try to remind people of how lucky we are to have each and every member of the team, because it does make such a big difference when someone culturally is not used to listening to the perspectives of women. It can be really helpful to point out how great it is that we will be able to hear from the other half of the community, because you have some really great women on the team who are going to be great at speaking to the people. It's, even when people often look at youth as people who are due less respect. And oftentimes the young people feel like they have the most to prove. And so they are going to be like the energetic ones who, want to work until 2 in the morning and are ready to start again at 6 in the morning. And it's their energy that really lets the teams get as far as they can. So it's great to really affirm people as a way to make sure the conflict is going in a healthy way. And then if that's not solving it, it goes back to number 6, expect to be uncomfortable. And there will be times when you have to pull someone aside, and you might be a couple years out of college and this is a medical doctor, and you need to say, listen, cut that shit out. And it's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable. But it's really important to having the team being able to function. And obviously you need to do it in a way that works well for you. So saying cut that shit out probably isn't the right thing for a lot of people. But you are more likely to regret not having that conversation and struggling with your team than you are to regret having that conversation. And again, being a little uncomfortable in some meetings after that when, there is a little bit of tension. But you will both move past it and it will create a much healthier dynamic.
That's good, Daniel. Yeah, I want to affirm that and say, yes, if you notice someone's talking too much or starting to be that person in the group that's kind of pulling it down, pull them off one-on-one and just ask them and see if they notice anything and responses in the room. And then just ask them how they think they're making the other people in the room feel. And it may come to that point where they're just not getting it and you have to be direct with them and just say, please, let's give other people an opportunity to speak. And it's really being hurtful, or it's really not creating the welcome, open environment that we want to in an unbiased and impartial type of way. It's good, Daniel.
One other thing that I'll just mention is don't forget about the other 10 to 15 people on the organizing team. They are great resources. If there are things that make you feel uncomfortable and you're not able to do them, they can help you with them. They have a lot of great expertise and can really help teams. They can really help with all of these steps. And so if there's something that just doesn't feel like it's going in the right direction, really, take advantage of the resources you have at hand, because just like the participants, all of the organizers are wonderful, amazing people who are there for a reason and can really help your team get to a place that is really amazing.
That's good. That's good, Daniel. Janet, do you want to share any experiences that you've had with your team from last year or teams in general? I think you're on mute. She might be transiting from work. Cool. Max, any other tips that you'd want to add to the list?
I've never been a design facilitator.
True.
I don't know if I really have tips there, but I don't know. I guess my role here in this year was also community building, and I guess that's part of the design facilitation as well. And if I would stress anything from this point, then it's probably I guess it's several ones. It's all the ones that are related to community building, enough time for rapport building, as you call it. Because I think, just as much as the projects are a vehicle for learning, the process is also a vehicle for building a small community in the team by making and designing together. I don't know. I would say that's something that was lacking in the team that I was a part in.
Yeah, what was that experience that you had?
It was really good, but I think that maybe even especially me, I was very focused on getting the job done, and didn't happen in the end. We were the only team without a prototype, and I was really frustrated. And I think I didn't see the 4 weeks of opportunities we had to even just enjoy each other's company and all of that, and even while you're arguing or
feel like people putting in too much work or too little work and all of that, getting upset about it is not really worth it. Because I think what can definitely last is the memory of the experience of working with people and maybe the friendship or the relationship, whether there's a prototype at the end or not, or your project work or whatever.
That's great, Max. Yeah, I think, no, Janet, we can't hear you.
Now?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I guess from the last time when I was in India, it was the first time I had facilitated and also the first time I was at IDDS. So to be really honest, I was really nervous going into it. So I would say for those that are facilitating for the first time to just, I know it's hard to have it, but just have confidence because you are supported by really amazing people, and all these trainings and materials that are put out before the summit really do help prepare you. And so it's just about believing in yourself that, you know, you have this role for a certain reason and you'll do great, and really believing that. And then the second thing I wanted to say was kind of tying back to what Cher was saying at the beginning, that your team is made up of individuals. So it is going to take different types of techniques and methods to address, you know, different situations and different personalities. I remember in India, I had to meet one-on-one many times with my team members. And although it took a lot of time, I think it does help kind of have them realize what their part in the team is. Maybe there's things they didn't realize they were doing before. And it also helps you understand where they're coming from too. And then when you kind of think about your team as a whole, it helps you kind of figure out how to glue everyone together. And the third thing is definitely don't hesitate to reach out to people. I had great shout out to Jessica and Daniel too for helping me, giving me advice on how to deal with certain situations. So yeah, those are the three things I would have to say.
That's great, Janet. And yeah, I think maybe we can all remember a time that we've been in a class or we've been in a small group or a project, and maybe people have only seen one side of us, and they start talking about a project or a particular topic, and we're like, wow, I actually know a whole lot about that, but I don't want to say anything, or you just kind of wait to be called on, or I don't know, maybe there's something really cool and unique about you that the group doesn't know yet. It's cool to remember that moment and think, as a facilitator, how can I really get people to feel comfortable sharing what those cool things about themselves are so that we can really engage those and put those to the test. So that's good. Sometimes it happens, a lot of times it happens through one-on-one conversations with them and just getting to know your team, how awesome they are, and really helping them to get to know each other. For some people, that'll be easier than others. But that's why we do, and I think you guys know this, but that's why we spend a lot of time on team building at the front end of IDDS, is so that people can see we are multifaceted, dimensional people. Like, even though I'm an engineer, I might also be like an Olympic swimmer or rower, which we've had a couple of those. And so like that people are these complex individuals who have a lot to offer. And so we bring that all together, we could really create something awesome. And yeah, I just want to thanks Janet for reminding us of that. All of you who are watching this and have been design facilitators, you were selected for a reason. You were selected because you are already good at this. So a lot of this is intuitive. Some of it might just be some helpful tips. But more so, it's just kind of good reminders on those especially when those rough times come. It's going to be okay. And you're there with the team. It's already going to be awesome. Even when there is conflict, it always ends up turning out okay. So sometimes people, we have had, dramatic things happen, like one person just left the summit. And that's okay. That was their choice. We try to bring them back. And then at the end of the day, they choose not to. And that's okay. And they went on, they had a great time. The person went on, they had a great time. So even though it might not be what you expect the unexpected and just enjoy it. It's really, I think it'll be a lot of fun. And I hope it's fun for you guys.
I would also just mention really quickly, these tips definitely apply to the project teams, but a lot of them also apply to the organizing team. That's also a team of people with interests and priorities, and where conflict will occur and where unity will occur. And so you really can apply these things. And it is really important to step back from organizing meetings and come back to these principles, to, you know, print out this slide and put it up on a wall wherever the organizing team has meetings.
That's good, Daniel. And I think Angela may have just left us, but that's why I'm really glad Angela was on the line, even though she's not a design facilitator. I think she has some experiences there that will be valuable to the team. And during organizer orientation, when we're all in person, that'll be helpful to go through. If you have time on your organizer calls to talk about this and just get to know each other more, great. If you don't, we will be doing it at organizer orientation and going through this a little bit more. Cool. With that being said, we have just a few minutes left, so I want to honor people's time. I'll just share this last slide that we have that, again, we'll go into more depth later, but these are just kind of tips for getting unstuck. I know that have worked for a lot of people over the years, a lot of different design facilitators. So the one I already mentioned, making it about the problem and not the person, and open-ended questions to refocus people. Remember your purpose. And I think, Daniel, I like what you said, like just reaffirming why we're here and what a grateful opportunity it is. And also remembering the larger purpose that this project is a vehicle for learning. It's okay, technically, if it doesn't get done. I mean, we want it to, but like, it's okay. This is a part of a bigger learning experience and working with communities. A tool of brainwriting, which we had mentioned before. And then another cool tool that I was reading about that someone had shared with me is that at Amazon, actually, every meeting begins with 20 to 30 minutes of silence, and they have to read through a narrative together that tells some sort of story and explains what the problem is and the characters, and ends with some fun open-ended questions for people to think about. So you don't have to do that, but if you find yourself getting stuck, that's a good way, especially for more introverted people who might just get very drained and exhausted by being with so many people. You could probably give them an activity to do on their own and come back together, and maybe they articulate their ideas better through something well thought out, like a narrative that they could share with people. So these are just a couple ideas. If you have more to add, please send my way. Please feel free to bounce them off of each other. We got a lot of expertise in the room. And with that, I'll go ahead and close unless there's any other questions or ideas. One more facilitation tip I'd like to give before I close. Some of you know this, but studies show it takes an introvert an average of 7 seconds to respond to a group question that's posed. So if you have to wait up to 7 seconds in your head, allow that to see if anyone responds, and then if not, you can move on.
If not, what?
If not, then you can move on or add something else to the conversation. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining, especially for our friends on the later time zones. Really appreciate having you guys on the line. I'm glad everybody was able to join. Thanks for sharing your stories. And it's good to hear all of you. And next week will be our last hangout of the season before we kick off. And we'll be talking about how to make sessions more hands-on. So come with your ideas, come with your challenges, and come with a few of our own. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Cher.
Thanks, Cher. This is great.
Thank you.